everyone, and welcome to another edition of Lydia's Crafty Corner with me, Lydia, in my little crafty corner. So today I'm going to be sharing with you these 4 cards, and they all use embossing paste coloured with a different colouring medium. So first up, we're going to be using the Altenew spray inks. Now these have a metallic sheen to them, so it's really fun to use them. The colours I am using is going to be the Frosty Pink, Coral Berry and the Ruby Red. So to start with, I'm adding a touch of embossing paste, the Altenew embossing paste, to my palette. I'm then going to add a couple of sprays to each of these little blobs that I have here, and I'm going to smush them together until the colour is equally distributed through the paste even. I'm then going to take the bubble wrap stencil and I'm going to place that on top of a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 panel of solid white cardstock. Once I've done that, I'm just going to scrape the coloured embossing paste now over the stencil to give me a really beautiful look. So I'm starting with the lightest colour and then working my way down to the darkest to give me an ombre look for each of the cards. So as you can see, I'm just going to scrape that off, remove the excess, and then I'm going to remove the stencil. And here it is there. You do want to wash off all of your palette and stencil before it dries. The next way is to use the beautiful watercolor inks from Altenew. So these are little liquid watercolors, and they can be used to add into your watercolor markers as well. So the colors I'm going to use here are the Turquoise, the Lagoon for this one, and then the Desert Night for the last one. I do find that these ones are really highly pigmented, so you don't need much of these to color your embossing paste in these wonderful colors that we have here. For this one, I'm going to be using the beautiful Broken Chevrons Stencil, again onto a panel which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Again, as before, I'm going to add the lightest colour and work my way down. So we have the Turquoise, the Lagoon, and also the beautiful Desert Night. Now, because we're adding these into a white paste, it is going to dim the colour a little bit, but these ones are so vibrant, and I do love the colours, how they turned out on this one. Again, as before, remove the stencil and then clean all of your implements and tools. So the third way that I'm sharing is to use alcohol marker refills. Now these are really highly pigmented alcohol ink, and these work a treat too. So as before, I'm going to add 3 dollops of the beautiful embossing paste onto my palette. And for these ones, I'm going to be using the Lavender Fields, the Deep Iris, and also the Midnight Violet inks for this one. So these are really highly pigmented, but I don't think they're as highly pigmented as the watercolor refills. So for this one, I'm going to be using on the plus side stencil. Again, we're going to go with a panel of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 classic Crest Soul White. So I'm going to, again, as before, I'm going to add these colors going down to create that ombre effect. So I have the beautiful soft colors going into that really bright purpley pink at the bottom. So once I've scraped that across, I'm going to remove the excess. I'm then going to remove that, and you can see that we have this third panel here. So for the fourth way to add colour is also you can use the ink. So these are just normal inks, and as before, 3 dollops of those, and then I'm going to add with the inks. Now I have to say that this way is a little bit more messier than the other ways, because you have to keep wiping the palette where you want to pop the ink, as opposed to just dripping the ink or spraying the ink into the embossing paste. So I would say this one is a little bit more messier, but it still gives really great effects. So if you just have the inks, you can still use them to create really beautiful effects with your embossing paste colours. So for this one, I'm going to be using the Chevrons Stencil. Again, as before, we have a panel here of classic Crest Solar White, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm going to add this onto the stencil using a little bit of masking tape from behind. I'm then going to add the colours into place. So I'm using the lightest colour, which was the Parrot, then the Olive, and this one here is the Moss. So I use the colours from the Tropical Forest inks for that one. I'm going to clean off my things, and then I'm going to move on to my little images. So for this one, I'm going to be using the flower vine stamp set, and I'm going to be using the largest vine, and I'm going to stamp this onto some vellum. So because I am going to be heat embossing this, I am adding a little bit of anti-static powder, which I'm using baby powder, and just using a brush to dust that all over. I'm then going to use some embossing ink to ink up my image. So this is a really sticky ink. You could use a pigment ink if you wished, but I do find that this embossing ink works really, really well, as it was made for the job. So I'm just going to ink that into place and stamp it down. And then once I have that, you can see that it's really light there. I'm then going to use the pure white embossing powder to pour over that, and that will stick to the embossing ink. Once I've done that, I'm just going to heat set it until all of that embossing powder has melted and it gives a really beautiful white sheen. So I did this 4 times for each of the 4 cards. I'm then going to snip this one out so I can then use my little mini blossom. I'm taking the coordinating die for the flower vine image, popping that around, adding a little bit of masking tape so it doesn't move, and I'm just going to run that through my machine. So I run it in the way, and then I'm going to run it back out, and that's going to give me a really great cut. So I'm just going to remove that from the die very gently because the vellum is very delicate. So for the sentiments, I decided to stamp a lot of them. Again, these are from the Flower Vine stamp set, and I'm stamping onto some jet black cardstock. I've used a little bit of anti-static powder on there, and I'm going to ink all of these sentiments up at once using some of the embossing ink from Altenew. Once I've done that, I can then add my powder on, and I'm using the pure white again. I do love a white sentiment on a black sentiment strip, so that's why I'm doing it this way. And again, as before, because we're using the embossing powder, you're going to need to heat set that so the powder melts and sticks onto the cardstock. Once I've done that, I'm then going to trim these. Now I'm going to have more sentiments that I need, but I can use these on future projects. And I do like to have these just to the side of me so I can use them on any project. So here are all of the little embossing paste panels, all nice and dry. And I have to say that blue one is my favorite. It's very, very vibrant, but this purple one is very vibrant too. So I am going to put all 4 of the cards together in the same way. So I'm going to attach the panel that we've done onto my card base using some Altenew tape glue. It's my favorite tape glue, and I go to it again and again. Once I've done that, I'm then going to take my die cut element. I'm going to pop that into place, and I'm going to adhere this down with my strip. So I'm just going to add a little bit of foam tape behind that sentiment strip, and then add that into place. I am using my cutting mat just to make sure it's nice and straight. So here are all 4 of the cards complete. So this is the one that we used the spray ink for. Then we used the watercolor, the liquid watercolor, sorry. And then we have used the beautiful artist marker refills. And then last but not least, we have the inks here. As you can see, there are many ways that you can colour embossing paste to create many different shades. I really do hope that you've enjoyed the video and that you like the techniques involved. If you do create a card that was inspired by this, it would be great if you do share, because I would love to see. Again, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again really, really soon. Bye-bye.